Wow. Am I live? This is working. Let's see. Seems to be good. Jesus. Okay, let's do some testing. It's been a while since I have since I've done a live stream. So I want to check a couple of things. Poop. We're going to poop in the chat. Chat seems to be working. I don't have a way set up right now where I can have the chat on my screen. Unless it lets me pop it out and I can just keep it like really small somewhere to see when people post stuff. Because I don't want all this shit on my screen all the time. It doesn't seem to let me do that. So we're going to try, I'm going to try just keeping the chat open. Caca. Okay, I can see the chat on my phone. I want to make sure I can see the chat is the important part, just in case anyone's coming in and there's things I need to go over. So we seem to be live. I want to test audio. Did that work? This is working. Go to the live section. So we seem to be live. I want to test audio. Did that work? This is working. That seems to not be working. Do we have... I believe that that would explain it. That would fully explain the lack of audio. We got to make sure our fucking thing is set up to actually... That seems to be giving me levels. I'm checking on my phone because I'm stupid. I'm sorry. I'm unprofessional. I've never done this before. This is mostly a test. There we go. Okay, we're getting levels on everything. I'm audible. Wait, I need to keep this on so that I can see the live chat. Okay, so the story here. The reason I'm doing this as a live stream and not as a video like I normally would is because I have now recorded this 3 separate times in OBS and it broke. Shit broke. So I recorded for multiple hours because I did an hour of recording and then had to fix a technical problem. And then did another hour of recording after I'd fixed that technical problem. And it just like the video file that I was using to edit got deleted. So that was like 2.5 hours of my life that I threw into the garbage directly. I'm doing fine. Everything is fine. So we're doing this as a live stream because then I can just... This is a better format for breaking down a song anyway, rather than editing it. Because really, I was trying to get this out today and having to edit down a 1 hour thing into one thing that, like, if I just do this, then you have the stream version of it. You can watch this if you are so inclined to watch longer form content or view things live. But then also at a later time, I could download this and edit the stream if I wanted to have a condensed version. So I think that's going to make more sense for me to actually be able to do track breakdowns. With all of that being said, let's go into ha, ha. I even had like a scripted intro for this that I started to write out. All right, let's do this. So Stephanie, Joanne, Angelina, Germanata. You rearrange the letters in that name and what do you get? That's right, Lady Gaga. Coincidence? I think not. I'm not going to do this intro. It's not a very good intro. I'll put it in when I do the edited version. When I do the edited version, we will, yeah. The edited version will have that intro in there because I recorded that and for some reason that file didn't disappear. Just the hour-long recording of me talking about this song. So let's just skip that intro, go directly into this song, which is Disease, my cover featuring Sproosy on guitars, the Bastard Cats on vocals, and kind of go into what the idea behind this was. I listened to this song sort of because my wife is a big fan of Lady Gaga. Like, I would be lying if I said I was always a fan of Lady Gaga. I was aware of her music. I was in a hard rock band that covered Bad Romance. We did, I was aware of the Meat Suit. I had very limited knowledge of Lady Gaga's work, but now I am married to a person who listens to Lady Gaga and likes her music. So when Disease came out, I gave it a listen because it's something my wife's interested in. And let's just say that it got immediately stuck in my head. For a solid couple of weeks. I could not stop singing it, much to the chagrin of my coworkers and my colleagues, loved ones. I was singing and humming it everywhere because singing and humming are my stems. And I cannot stop doing that. And I apologize to everyone. While I was sort of singing it out loud, there was a point where I went, this kind of sounds like when it's by itself, it could be like one of those spy shits. I don't know what that means. Spy type songs. You could, it sounded like a James Bond tune to me. So it was like, it'd be pretty neat if someone covered James Bond or did Disease in like a James Bond style. Hold on a second. That's me. I'm a musician. I could do this. So I decided to do it and started putting it together. Now, my primary influences when I was working on this were the three most modern Bond songs. So it was No Time to Die by Billie Eilish, Skyfall by Adele, and Sam Smith's Writing on the Wall. And I think Writing on the Wall is my favorite of those three, just like orchestral wise, arrangement wise, composition wise. It just has a lot of moments of like responses to vocal lines on these soaring string melodies that I love the shit out of. It sounds so good. So that was my, I think, primary influence. Trying to think, I feel like Skyfall ended up being sort of like vibe wise, a little closer to what I was trying to go for once I got into the song. Now, besides the string thing, let's go over just like the basic instrumentation that I had for the song. So there are vocals. You'll notice these are the vocal tracks, and everything is very minimal. In a James Bond song, you're generally not going to have like too many layers of vocals. You just have like, it's sort of that old, like, I'm thinking like 50s style, like person with the big square microphone, that vibe where you're just having a person sing and they are the center point. And so I didn't want to overproduce the vocals to where it would distract from that. And to that end, everything vocally was pretty minimal. There was like a track for the verse, track for the chorus. That's about it. Shit goes crazy at the very end. But besides that, vocally, there was not a lot happening. So it was pretty minimal. You've got pianos. Piano is pretty important for modern Bond songs. Like pretty much all of them sort of start with a minimal piano sound and vocals, and that's about it. Just got to get that atmosphere right. I have some harps in here just doing like glissandos for transition sections and a couple of arpeggiated bits just to add some movement. Then we've got strings, because you can't do a Bond song without strings. You could, but why would you? Strings are primarily Cinematic Studio strings, which have a more romantic kind of muted feel, and that works for this kind of thing and to not overshadow the vocals. I did layer them with Metropolis Arc 1 strings just for textural reasons primarily, and had like string effects that provided again transition things. There's a lot of things that are in here just for transition purposes. I do have some brass in there. It is primarily Metropolis Arc 1, just because it's the main library that I have and what I've gotten used to using. So trumpets, different horn patches, bass trombones, and tubas are all from Metropolis Arc 1. The only issue with that library is you have to have everything. If you're trying to do any of the more like subtle stuff, it really does like mezzo forte to like quadruple forte or whatever. Like that's its dynamic range. So if you want to do any of that nice, like kind of low stuff, you have to basically have the dynamics at the very bottom. So to that end, I did also add in some trombones from Museo. So some Cinesamples, I think core brass stuff, mostly just to play chords and kind of fill out the brass a little bit more. And then a trombone, because I wanted to have that wow, that kind of like classic James Bond sound that you get from trombones. So we'll hear that coming up. Then I sent the track with all of the orchestral stuff over to my brother, who is a really good guitar player, songwriter, producer. I just sent it all to him and said, do what you feel is right. Like, not much direction there. And the first pass on everything he gave me was amazing. I only gave him like some notes and then had him send stuff back to me, and he just fucking blew it out of the park. Knocked it out of the park, blew it. Yikes. So there's a lot of guitar tracks that pretty radically changed how I approached the song after he sent them, and some stuff that like straight up gave me chills when I heard it. So we'll go over that too. I could have potentially used VST instruments like I do on a lot of my stuff for guitars. but I wanted the authentic shit, and I'm not a guitar player, so if I use VST instruments, mimicking guitars is always going to sound bad. It's going to sound like a piano player playing guitar sounds. So he fucking knocked it out of the park. I'm so glad I sent everything over to him because we'll hear it. It sounds great. I have just a VST bass playing fairly simple stuff. The bass parts are not too involved. I don't really know bass players that could have contributed bass tracks to that, so I made that sacrifice. I don't think it's really too noticeable. And then percussion, we just have timpani sort of emphasizing a lot of bass stuff. Damage 2 cymbals doing a lot of swells, and damage drums providing some extra texture at the end and just doing a lot of like low bass drum hits. So that's primarily what those are there for. The main percussion is going to be big rock drums from Tune Track's Easy Drummer. I just liked the way those sounded. So I think it's a Gretsch drum set. Just big old rock sound, and I liked it a lot. So that's the instrumentation. That's what we use here. With all of that, let's start to break down the actual song. The beginning of it, generally, I find that James Bond songs are going to have sort of an intro where it's going to either introduce something or it's going to just sort of like get you into the vibe. This is when like they transition from the, in the modern ones, they transition from him doing something to, the shot of him shooting at the guy with the gun barrel. So I start with just a horn chord that kind of sounds like the James Bond thing. They might have traditionally done this on trombones or trumpets. I ended up just using a 3-horn patch because I liked the way it sounded. And then we have an orchestral intro that is going to be playing the melody that happens in the verses. So we're introducing that beforehand before you actually hear it on something else. All of that being said, let's listen to just the intro, and then I'll go over some of the things that happen in there. That's your intro. Pretty straightforward. So the first violins are just playing the "There Are No More Tears to Cry" melody. We have the horns playing that first chord and then just hitting, or like the intro chord, and then hitting the first chord in the introduction and fading out. So they're not actually going to be there the whole time. They're just sort of providing the intro and then playing a little bit to make a transition between that first hit and the thing like smoother. So the strings do a little like melodic thing going down to the note that they're hitting. The violins are primarily, the first violins at least, are going to be playing the main melody there, with the second violins providing some lower harmonies and occasionally joining the, no, I guess it's all just harmonies. So second violins are pretty much providing harmonies. We've got the violas coming in later to provide more harmonies, sort of staggering the entrances of the different strings so that the intro has the opportunity to build. The violas are then also doing like a response to the first violin melody. This little thing here. You find those moments where the melody is going to have space to breathe and you introduce something else just to kind of keep things moving, just to add interest, because the melody in the violins is pretty much the same thing repeated. So you just want some interest in there. We've got cello in there, just sort of providing the lower... I think the cello and the basses are sort of just playing in octaves and providing the low end of this and filling everything out. There's a little at the very end here, a Metropolis Arc 1, I believe it's a tremolo. It's not, it is octaves, just to kind of make the very end of this a little bit bigger. So that's the strings, pretty straightforward for the beginning. The whatchamacallums, the three horns, are just sort of providing background stuff that most of the time you don't really notice. The levels on this are pretty low. Yeah, it's there texture wise just for the second half to feel a little bit different than the first half did. Yeah, they're just playing like chords. Pretty straightforward. The tubas are introduced at the end of the bar just to provide some low end and kind of swell into the first verse. Besides that, we've got a little cymbal swell, several cymbal swells happening over the course of this whole thing. Just to provide transition, and timpani rolls leading into the first verse. With all of that being said, we've got one more thing, just like another little run thing in the violins, to get us to the first chord of the verse. And the cinematic studio strings all are playing a chord at the beginning of that first verse and then fading out, because we want everything to be minimal by the time the first verse comes around, trying to cut it down to just piano and vocals so that it settles down a bit and the focus is really on the vocals. There is also like a harp glissando in there just to transition us into the first verse, which we will listen to now. Here we go. That's verse 1. Verse 1 is pretty simple. The verse piano, like generally the intro pianos in these James Bond songs are going to be pretty simple rhythmically. And I did that for this one. The verse piano is like a slightly more muted piano to give the vocals room to exist. The first half of the first verse is just verse piano and verse vocals, just sort of reverby vocals. Once we get to the second half, we've got the cello coming in and playing sort of a counter melody with the vocals, which is just chord tones pretty much. So it's not going to like get in the way of the vocals. Like the vocals are still the center point, but you want the cello there to provide interest just because the vocal line is repeating. Basically, it's the same thing. Like we've got different lyrics but the same melody. So start to add things in the second half to transition into that second half. We do have a lot of things coming in on the bar before, so like bar 4 of the verse. Just little subtle things to like introduce the instruments that are about to come in instead of having them slap you in the face when they come in on the bar. So there's a couple of things, like I've got the low strings here and the basses from Cinematic Studios. That's octaves in the Metropolis arc strings, and those are there primarily to beef up this thing that my brother did on the guitars, which is a good little introduction to the guitars without anything ever like the guitars cut out there. So it's just like the guitars are there, but they're not present yet. It's just sort of leading you into things that are eventually going to be in the tracks. So we have the tuba also doing that, I believe, just hitting those same notes and fading out. And then there's this little horn part in here, which is very quiet. Like you barely even notice it's in there when you're playing it with the full track. We've got a little cymbal swell happening at the end there, happening between the drum set and the damage cymbals. The bass also comes in the bar before everything's about to start, just to introduce that as well. And then we've got the pre-choruses. That was a lot of explanation for 8 bars of music. Let's go. Before we go into the first chorus there, we'll go over the pre-chorus. Now, in the original song, it's Lady Gaga going as a call, and then the response being the main vocal melody going, screaming for me, baby, like you're gonna die. That vocal line didn't necessarily fit in with what I was trying to go for here, so that part is instead being played on the viola. So we've got the viola doing a little slide up. With the cello. So we've got just the strings sort of providing atmosphere. There's harmonics in the first violins. The violas are playing that little part. And then the cello are just sort of going between chord tones, not being too invasive. And then the bass is providing the bottom there. Sort of the lead player, I'd say, there's a couple of, so the pianos are doing sort of a back and forth eighth note thing between one note and the melody that the ba. Screaming for me, baby. Still pretty simple. Now, the guitars are kind of the, like, it changed. He sent me these guitars and it changed how I arranged the track. So the beginning of it, we just have the guitar tremolos. Which I just have running through a little bit of distortion and an auto panner that moves them from side to side. Not quite fully side to side, but just provides a little bit of movement. This next part is what he added as sort of a, it boosts the call that happens in the vocals. I loved that so much. I did some like adjustment on the panning so that it was kind of traveling around you left and right. And then we also have this thing that I copied and just reversed that and ran it through some Valhalla shimmer to make it kind of sparkly. Two of them together. And they're panned like opposite directions so that they both sort of like interact with each other. It just like, it's a chaotic mess of guitars flying around you. And I loved the way that ended up sounding. Brass is not doing much. The trombones come in the bar before, just the same thing as what I said before. Instead of just having the trombones hit on that bar 22 there, they come in with a chord the bar before just to introduce them. And they're just playing simple chords. Just providing some textures and then sort of swelling into the final chorus. When he sent the guitars, originally I hadn't had anything hitting for this guitar dive, like, because I didn't even have that as a planned thing in my original song. So he put that in there and I decided to layer it with a couple of things. The original was just these tremolo strings from Metropolis Arc. Which I love that sound. But once he sent the guitars and I had that extra piece in there, I just wanted to beef that up and make it more of like a hit. So we had these Metropolis Arc low strings doing the portados, just sort of emphasizing this thing that he did that I loved so goddamn much. It just sounds nice. I like the way that sounds. And then in the, we have a bunch of things hitting a chord and kind of swelling into this next section. We've got this little string effect thing, and this pops up a few times over the course of the song. That is also from Metropolis Arc 1. So that's used as a transition piece. And then I think we've got a timpani roll coming in and cymbal swell while the drums are just playing like an eighth note tom thing and building up. And I think they hit. They do da 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 on the very end there. Just coming into the chorus. Now let's listen to the chorus for the first time. Actually, first, I did say I kept the vocals pretty minimal. I did add this neat little thing that just sort of sits underneath everything as a, like, if I don't do a lot with the vocals, then when I do something with the vocals, you'll notice I did something with the vocals. Just a, it sort of like sits underneath everything, but like just a neat little piece of ear candy that that we didn't have. So anyway, last chorus, or first chorus, here we go. That is the first chorus. So there's a couple things going on there. We have the piano just sort of providing, all the piano parts are pretty simple. Piano's just providing like the sort of standard bond sound, or chords, I guess, with some slight changes to like the bass notes just to match everything else. Sort of keeping that eighth note rhythm going. Strings are sort of boosting the vocal melody while also providing harmonies. And then we've got the Metropolis arc spiccatos providing that eighth note chug that the piano is doing as well. Chords are slightly different in this next section. Just briefly for like this little two bar bit. The staccatos do, or the spiccatos do a little response to the curias that happen in. So just a neat little thing, and that comes back later, but it's a little bit bigger later. Then we've got the brass. The brass is fun. It is mostly just doing chords, but I have a 9-horn patch and a trumpet providing a melody with a solo trombone doing a, it's got that blah sound. This is where I tried to capture kind of that like classic blah 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 blah, that that sound from old James Bond stuff. I just love the way those trombones, or that solo trombone, sounds so much. It's just the perfect. It's not used all the time because I already have trombones playing chords underneath it, but I just wanted that little extra texture for the brass, and to provide like a counter melody when the vocal melody sort of ducks out a little bit. In those moments where the vocals need to breathe, you can have the other instruments playing stuff. Guitars are pretty simple at the beginning. They're both playing the same thing. There's a lot of kind of delay in there. Just doing arpeggiated things that sort of follow the chords, and panned hard left, hard right. He wonderfully kept it pretty minimal. So we only have 2 stereo guitar tracks going in that section, which were panned. Pretty minimal. The bass is just kind of providing the rhythm. And then the drum set starts to go crazy. Sort of. This was, I think, primarily Skyfall influenced. So that's the beat's pretty simple. Just ride, snare, kick. And then I think we have timpani just sort of providing extra hits and some melodic content for. Pretty simple. Okay, so that was the chorus, and then we've got this bit at the end where the piano and the staccatos are hitting that little response to the... And then we'll go into the post-chorus, which is also fun. Okay, so post-chorus. In the original song, Lady Gaga does a da 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 wah on vocals. I again took that part and just put it on strings. It is being played on first violins, second violins, and violas. The basses and the cello are just sort of providing that sound. Pretty simple part on cellos and basses. Cello. That hit lines up with what a couple other things are doing. The important part there was what the brass was doing. So we have that bois trombone coming back in. Which I fucking love so much. Oh my God. But everything's playing chords. And then when that part comes in, everything hits those staccato notes just to get out of the way while the solo trombone's doing its bois thing. And then we've got a little swell on a bunch of stuff coming into verse 2. Guitars are pretty minimal for that section. We've got an arpeggiated thing that he was doing, which also kind of fades out as the trombones do their bois. And then he did that nice little harmonic thing to introduce stuff that was going to come into verse 2, which really helped and was quite pretty. The basses are just hitting the notes and doing that same hit that the lower instruments are doing to get out of the way for the trombones. The damaged drums come in here and they're just playing like it's just a low bass drum. Just a little thing. The timpani sort of support that too. So all together. Oh yeah, and we've got this little harp providing like extra movement in there with the guitars. And that's about it. And then a little string run going down to verse 2, kind of like what we had for the beginning. Yep. Verse 2 changes it up a little bit. Instead of a piano, we have, it goes down to just sort of the rhythm section minus the piano. So the guitars, bass, and drums are sort of the background. Guitars have a number of things going on there. So he's playing the bass notes. There's some harmonic stuff and some responses to the vocals. That harmonic thing comes back in. There's another rhythmic arp thing just to provide some movement for the second half. And then everything kind of gets bigger just for this last section here to transition in. Nice little hit on the end there just to transition into the second pre-chorus. Brass is pretty much just providing a transition. Like, brass is not in the second verse at all. It's just transitioning into the post-chorus. Little cymbal swell coming out of verse 3 into post-chorus 2. Post-chorus 2, or not post-chorus, pre-chorus 2 is pretty much the same as pre-chorus 1.
Screaming for me, baby, like you're gonna die. Poison on the inside, I could be your antidote tonight. Screaming for me, baby, like you're gonna die. Poison on the inside, I could be your antidote tonight.
So there's not too much that's different in there. There's ba being played on more instruments, and then the violas in the second half start to play like counter melody just to switch it up a little bit. There's a harp part that is doing a glissando to emphasize the just that little thing. Nice little thing. Pianos still pretty minimal. We again have Metropolis arc low strings hitting that thing and the string effect coming out of it. A lot of this part is pretty similar, except you have now a drum beat going for the second pre-chorus. Like, subtle changes, but it's mostly the same thing. So, chorus number 2. Stop there. Chorus 2, pretty similar to chorus 1. Something I actually forgot to mention for chorus 1, because this happened there too, is I have this Musio choir patch emphasizing the chords that change. So we've got this women's choir, just Oz, just briefly playing that little section. So it's pretty much the same for the entirety of chorus 2, but the ending coming out of chorus 2, we hit those responses to the Kyria a little bit harder. They're actually on octaves instead of just being on the lower strings, and I think the pianos also play those in octaves. Wrong spot. So just hits a little bit harder. We've got a little drum fill because the post chorus that hits the second time around is larger. So let's play that and then go over it. That's post chorus 2. He wonderfully, when he provided these guitars, did a nice eighth note thing with a little bit of swing on there on the 16ths. It's simple, but it just propels the second post chorus beyond what everything did. It also starts to have like more crash cymbals. The pianos are also hammering. The idea is just do it bigger. So pianos are hammering those eighth notes and doing the little responses to the main melody that's happening in there, which is being played on the trumpets and the 9 horns. And the horns have a little rip in there, which is pretty neat. It's pretty cool. I like it a lot. And then with the piano, you've got the little It's very subtle, but it's in there. I think it also happens in the spiccatos potentially. Yeah, little thing in there. We don't have the bois in the trombone the second time around because the focus is kind of different for this whole section. The bass is also doing eighth notes. Just fucking hammer in those eighth notes. And then we've got this little sort of drum fill slash hits, which the strings are hitting and the guitars are hitting and a couple other things. Trombones are also hitting. Basically everything's hitting. And then I wanted to bring down the next section significantly, so we cut down to just vocals, piano, a harmonic violin, and that's it. It cuts down, make it more intimate. The pianos are playing a higher thing. I had my lovely wife do the lower octave instead of what they do in the original one, which is kind of like also softer, but in the higher octave. I thought it would be neat to drop it down an octave. It just provides a different kind of tone. So. Okay, so that is my favorite section of the song. So I just wanted to break down how this bridge works and what I love about it. So piano is pretty minimal. Just want the vocals, which have now dropped down in dynamic and pitch to the lower octave, to stand out. So you don't want too many things in there, but then they jump up to the normal octave, and so everything starts to come back in. Piano, we introduce a soft, just like the eighth notes coming back in, with cello sort of accompanying.
Lay you down like 1, 2, 3. Eyes roll back in ecstasy.
The strings all sort of accompanying what the vocals are doing there. Not doing anything too crazy. Don't want them to get in the way.
Lay you down like 1, 2, 3.
The horns also kind of just providing some texture for that cello part, and I kept it pretty small. Just used a 3-horn patch instead of the 9-horn one because I don't need it to be very big. Then this is where it fucking takes off, and I love this so much. Originally I just had, I think, like this little thing going in here, and the drum hits. Like, I just put the drum hits in there, and then when I sent the track over to, like, everything fades out there, but you've got the string riser coming in and the drum hits going, which was already pretty big and I liked it. But then I sent it over to my brother, who was like, when he sent back the tracks, went, "Oh, so I did like 5 different riser things. Feel free to just like take whatever you want, use it, you know, to your own discretion or whatever." And I used all of them. So let's I just want you to hear the guitars by themselves. Like full, like THX, like he gave me so many layers, and I was like, I think I'm going to use every single one of them.
Eyes roll back in ecstasy. I know your secrets, I could kill you. Oh, kill your disease.
And it just is so fucking big. I've got a little delay, just sort of holding out to make everything sort of like bigger for that section, provide another texture. And then this is the final chorus, or I guess it's technically kind of a post-chorus because it uses the post-chorus melody, but it's the ending of the song. This is the first time that I really have more than one vocal track going at any given time. So it just went sort of fucking ham on everything. So the vocals change pretty drastically.
Oh, kill your disease. Kill your disease. Kill your...
So the we'll listen to the whole thing, but
Oh, kill your disease. Kill your disease. Kill I can smell your sickness. I can kill your disease.
that fucking final chorus punches me right in the gut every time I listen to it. I love it so much. The vocals, this is the first time that the vocals actually play that post-chorus melody.
Oh, kill
So I had my wife provide one instance of And then for the first time in this track, I introduce a men's choir from Metropolis Arc 1 doing that same melody, but like an octave down. And the women's choir from Voxos. Which sounds kind of funny by itself, but sort of the idea here is wall of sound. So even if a thing sounds funny in isolation, when it's all together, it makes sense. So we have these three. And then there's this melody that Lady Gaga does in the original. And then at the very end, the choirs go fucking crazy and have like a big series of chords that they all hit. And it's just a lot of... we do also have a higher harmony part that's going in there just for these two, so that's also different. They fucking nailed the vocals. I love them so much. We've got pianos and harps in this bit. Actually, there's no harps. There's just the chorus piano, which is just going fucking ham and hitting those eighth notes, and then the responses to the da 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 blah blah boom bum bum. I think the guitars are doing something that we'll hear in a sec here, but I made the pianos kind of follow the melody that the lower guitars are doing, so you can kind of hear it. It's very subtle. So that's what the pianos are doing. Pretty simple. A lot of things are playing the So we've got the higher strings all doing that in octaves. Celli and arc spiccatos are just chugging away at that eighth note. There's a lot of things playing the eighth notes. Metropolis arc low strings providing the beef. And then we go into the brass. Actually first, so... the spiccatos really hitting that response to the thing in there. Wow, good words, great words. So that's the strings. Brass, I also have the trumpets and the nine horns doing that, while all of the other instruments are pretty much just hitting chords. Trombones just sort of beefing up the lower octave on that other melody that happens, and then like this section, you probably wouldn't find something like this in a Bond song. This is more like wall of sound, big rock song. The kind of shit I normally like to produce. And so we did the rest of it James Bond, and then at the very end, everything just goes fucking ham. And I love it. Guitars, pretty simple. So the guitars are, it's 4 tracks. There's a couple things in octaves, I believe. We still have sort of that same rhythm that he did in the post-chorus earlier, being played on those 2. And then this is where he's playing sort of the post-chorus melody, but also doing some changes to it. And then meanwhile on the right side, as sort of a response to this thing. So you put them together and they play off of each other pretty nicely. And then you put that in with the piano, which I mentioned earlier is kind of playing along. Doing some of those like little, not chromatic, but some little lead ups to the notes that he's hitting. Bass, I think, is just going ham too. Just hitting hard. Also emphasizing the responses to stuff. Emphasizing the 8th notes, just giving everything crazy rhythm. The percussion, for the first time, we are fully on the crash cymbals, just going ham. I know I'm saying that a lot, but geez, I just like the way this final chorus / post-chorus turned out. So we've got the drum set on the crash cymbals and occasionally hitting snares with those hits. What did I do? Timpani providing just the bass notes and some extra hit. And then this is the first time the damage drums also come in and just sort of beef up the hits for the snares and the kicks. And you have a nice little, I tried not to like over quantize it, so there's a nice little like kind of flaming effect, which gives it sort of a clappy sound, which is fun. And then you have to end on a James Bond chord, don't you? So the combination of the strings and the brass are kind of doing... There's a bunch of things hitting those chords. We've got... sounds like the Metropolis Archive strings are doing some tremolos for that end bit. Just really, like, for the ending, trying to make everything go fucking crazy. The guitars are pretty much doing the same thing. But it just, like, those things with the vocals, it just, like, everything's soaring and, like, reaching towards this. And then we cut everything out, and we have that final James Bond chord. Which, when I sent it to my brother, I had originally played it on just the harp and piano. And when I sent it to him, he said that is actually, at least that way, very difficult to play. So he sent me 2 different guitar tracks that I sort of layered together and staggered. And I think the bass also hits just on the one. And that's how the song fucking ends. Directed by Albert Broccoli. Albert Broccoli didn't direct this, did he? Wasn't he the writer or the producer or some shit? What am I saying? I don't know anything about James Bond. Anyway, that is Disease in its entirety, and a much longer breakdown of it than I was anticipating to do. Mixing stuff for it is pretty minimal. A lot of the vocal tracks, there's low end taken out little boosts and things. Like, I try not to do too much in the mixing. I focus a lot on the arrangement. So not too much really goes on there. There's de-essing on vocals, compression, more compression, some reverbs. A couple of things I have like imagers just to sort of like put them in the space a little bit differently. Apparently not much at all for pianos or harps. Like, I have a room reverb that everything goes to pretty much to kind of put it in the same room so it sounds like it's a live performance in a way. So all the pianos are going to that room verb, and they have their own reverb too, which I think it's just copies of like stock Cubase reverbs with settings tweaked. Again, I don't do too much here. I do some filtering of the reverb so that it's not taking away from the attack of the main instruments. Strings, I'm pretty much just cutting out low end, and I think boosting some of the like the high end on at least this one. Cinematic Studio strings tend to be a little more muted, so just a little boost at around 6 to 7K just to give it that nice air. Besides that, everything sort of just works. The strings as a whole are going to the room verb to put them in the same room as everything else, but then they have their own reverb that is slightly different. Brass is the same story. I put some, looks like black valve and distortion on the 9 horns patch just to make those stand out a little bit more. I tend to do that. There's a lot of things I just have in my template, and I can't necessarily say that I change them much from the template itself. It just, like, if it works, then you don't tweak it too much. Guitars were probably where I did the most mixing, just because those were audio files, and there was a lot of like putting them in spaces and making them work with all the orchestral stuff, since I sent the orchestral stuff out to the guitar player in full. So he had tracks that he had to play along with, and I had to sort of like fit his tracks into all of the orchestral stuff. So there was a lot of panning being done between instruments, EQing to make sure it's not taking the space of anything else that I have in the track. But also pretty simple, like distortion on a couple of things, Valhalla shimmer on some stuff just to add some nice little shine, some basic compression, everything being sent to the room verb to put it in the space. That's about it. I've got one little track here for all the big risers that happen at the very end, just so I could automate this fader and have everything swell in volume as well as tone. So that's in there just for that. You can see that all of the risers are sort of panned to different spaces so that everything has its own section. Bass, I didn't really do much. There's a lot of processing already on the bass like I have it sent to the room verb that everything else is in, just so it sounds like it's in the same space. But the original sound library that I used for that already processed it enough to where I was like, I don't need to do much with this. Percussions have their own, I think, plate reverb, just to provide a little extra shimmer on top, and then are also all sent to the room reverb. I did some black valve on the drum set, a little bit of EQ there just to, like, the drums are the primary thing, kind of at 50 hertz and below, so they have a little bit of boost there just to sort of balance out the track. Cut out some of the around this range just to cut out sort of the muddiness, also in the like 420 range. Little boost on the high end. Cymbals, I cut out the low end, so it was just that sort of shimmer. Cut out low end on timpani. There's light compression. There's like a percussion bus compression. Yeah. The mixing on all this, I'm still pretty like simple on. I try to mostly change things within the arrangement if I have issues with how things sound. And I do a lot of stuff on the go as well. Like Cubase has this little thing on the side, so when you have channels selected, you can change things as you go along, and that sort of helps me keep everything within like thinking of the arrangement. So if I add a thing, I can be like, oh, I want all this stuff on there, and I can add it while I'm doing it instead of doing it later. So there's not a lot of mixing that goes on later on. That's really, like, I didn't need to go through all that. I could have just told you I don't do a lot of mixing. There's like light volume automation on a couple of things. Basic EQing, compression. Try not to overdo it. Try to make the arrangement of everything sound great before trying to do it in mixing. And it's possible if I had sent this off to a person who does mixing, they would have approached it differently, but this is how I do it. Besides that, I'm pretty sure the mastering for it was also pretty minimal. See if I can pull up the track for that. Look, here it is. I guess this was, I had done a little bit of boost on the, whatchamacallit? Little bit of boost on the drums. That's about it. Just on the drums, with the master rebalance, like just the slightest bit to make them hit a little bit harder. Added some punch with low end focus, light, kind of emphasized the kick a little bit more, I think was the idea with the filters, and a little bit of sparkle. Do multiband compression where usually I'm just sort of like kissing everything a little bit. So just slight sort of keeping everything glued together. Dynamic EQ. I tend to run the master assistant on a lot of these and then just do a couple of changes, so I don't do too much. Again, I'm trying to do most of the stuff in the arrangement and not afterwards. Like, stuff gets done, but it feels like it's very minimal and doesn't make too much of a difference. I tend to run, like, I saw a tutorial video at some point that said, try using a vintage limiter and then the maximizer. And I was like, okay. And then I tried it and I liked how it sounded. It's possible I could just do it with one maximizer, but I just sort of, each of these are doing less as compared to one of them doing all of the final maximizing to get everything to the final level. So the version of this that is out on stores is actually going to sound different than what we had in the Cubase file, because this is obviously the pre-mastered version. So there's it'll like sonically sound a little bit different, but that's about it. All that being said, this was Disease in its entirety. A fairly thorough breakdown. We have taken a little over an hour, which is about what it took me to do it the first time around too. I think I want to do more of these kinds of live streams to break down songs, because I think this is just a better format to do that in than like actually editing a video. And I feel that creating content for YouTube takes away from the amount of time that I'm going to have to do the fucking music creation. And I think it's easier to do. I would rather make the content creation easier to focus on the music. So that's the goal here. I already have said it in a couple of things and let them know, but my wife, the bastard cats, fucking destroyed all these vocals. The vocals are so good. I love how they turned out so much, and I could have sung it myself, but I am so glad I have someone with a better voice than I do in my life who can provide all these things. So the vocals are great. Guitars like provided so many atmospheric things and little counter melodies and tiny little subtle bits of interest, and fucking the THX logo that I wouldn't have had in there before if I hadn't sent this off to him. So please check out Sproosy. He's amazing. Does his own songwriting, production, composition. Pretty great. Can't recommend either of them highly enough. Bastard Cats has less stuff out. Like at this moment, they've mostly just done tracks with me. We have, I think, 2 tracks out together. But there will be more from them in the future because I like the way they sound on things. So we will have that in the future. Check both of them out. All of that being said, we're going to end the stream here. So thank you guys. I know a couple of people stopped by. If you're watching this on the playback or whatever, the YouTube thing, feel free to leave a comment. Just, I don't know, if there was anything I left out or anything you had questions about, feel free to post it in the comments. I will either answer through, through the comments themselves, or I can create entire videos as responses to things. Because I also need ideas for videos and stuff. So let me know in those comment sections. Be sure to smash that there like button. That like button stole your money and you gotta kick its ass. So punch the like button in the face. Go back in time. End the life of the like button's grandpa so the like button no longer exists. I've lost track of what I was saying. Point is, like the video, feel free to share with your mother, with people you hate that you're like, check out this, and then put them in a chair and hold their eyebrows or their eyes open like it's Clockwork Orange. Force them to watch this so that I get that viewer retention. Just, a couple of ideas. Or you don't have to do any of that. I'm just glad you're here if you're here. All of that being said, we'll do another breakdown next week of what was I going to do? I had a whole thing. We're going to break down a little track that I did called The Dark Side, which was a Loki theme inspired piece, and kind of go over that was a commission piece. So we'll go over the prompts for it and how I approached it. So yeah, thanks everyone who stopped by. We'll see you on the next stream. Okay. Bye.